Hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Agbo Ikor. I'm the lead organizer here with Spark Reproductive Justice Now. So thank you for joining us for this webinar. We really wanted to have this opportunity to introduce folks just to who Spark is. Maybe you may have just heard of us. Maybe you donated to us in the past. Maybe you're just interested in volunteering with us. But for whatever reason you're here, we're glad to have you, and we're glad just to welcome you to Spark. So I guess, we can just get started. So Spark, who we are and what we do. Let me see if I can make this work. Perfect. So I guess I want to start out by just getting to know y'all. So you should have a chat box somewhere on your screen. And forgive me, this is definitely a new program for me. This is actually the first webinar that Spark has really done. So welcome to our first webinar. But you should have a chat box somewhere. It should just say chat. So just, in the chat box, just, introduce yourself, your name, your gender pronouns, where you're from, where you are right now. Just, I want to just get a picture of who's in the room. Describe your hometown in 3 adjectives. And then what social justice issue resonates with you? And I asked that because towards the end of the broadcast, we'll go back to that and we can just talk about how RJ sort of fits into that, or how Spark sort of fits into those social justice issues, because RJ is a movement that's multifaceted in and of itself, but the way Spark moves, it's very inclusive and conducive to multiple movements and frameworks. So just type your answers in the chat box, and we'll address it later. And then I'll be reading them as they come up, and we can get a better picture of who's in the room as well. So let's see. Oh, we have someone from DC, from Advocates for Youth. Welcome. Oh, someone from Memphis, Tennessee. Cool, cool, cool. I went to college in Tennessee, so welcome, welcome, welcome. West Virginia. Oh, I'm so glad we have all these people from from up and down the East Coast, I guess. But yeah, please keep giving those answers. And we will get started. And as y'all give answers, I'll just keep going with the webinar and getting just giving y'all information about Spark, because that's why we're here, right? So, oh, did I go? Okay. So what is Spark? To put it simply, we're a grassroots reproductive justice organization located in Atlanta, Georgia, working towards RJ in Georgia and throughout the South. That's, one sentence, basically what we do. Of course, we're a lot more than that. But, if you were to just describe just Spark, that is who we are. The issue with that is that's not just who we are. There are plenty of organizations that could use this literal sentence to describe themselves, but Spark moves in sort of a unique way, and that's why I wanted to get this opportunity to explain that to y'all. So just a little bit of background about Spark. We came out of Georgians for Choice. This was a coalition that came together in 1986, my goodness, to bring together a number of women's organizations, reproductive health and rights organizations, to greater impact the protection and expansion of women's reproductive freedom in Georgia. So Paris Hatcher and Mia Mingus, they joined Georgians for Choice in 2004, where they attempted to apply a radical queer analysis of the RJ movement. when they got a bit of pushback with that analysis, they actually, from Georgians for Choice, sort of splintered off and formed Spark Reproductive Justice in 2007. So Paris and Mingus, these were two young queer women of color. And when I say young, I mean like they were both under the age of 25, starting this reproductive justice organization here in the South. It's just amazing that they were able to put that together. And then its legacy lives on to today. And they brought it together to build and strengthen the power of our communities and an RJ movement that centers Black women and queer and trans people in the state of Georgia and the Southeast. So they really, really were intentional about bringing that radical queer analysis into RJ spaces, recognizing that not all RJ spaces, though queer liberation and RJ are inextricable, not all RJ spaces are as intentional about uplifting that queer and trans analysis. So we're very thankful that they were able to create Spark with that analysis, and they're still out here doing amazing work. Paris specifically here in Georgia in the South, doing great work within the RJ movement, acting sort of a bit of as an advisor to a lot of just RJ organizers in Atlanta, and just doing incredible work herself. And then Mia, if I'm not mistaken, is more on like the West Coast doing that organization, particularly for like disability justice as well. So they're still out here, still doing incredible work, and we're very thankful that they were able to create this space for us to do and just amazing work. So our mission, we work to build new leadership, change culture, advance knowledge in Georgia and the South to ensure individuals and communities have resources and power to make sustainable and liberatory decisions about our bodies, genders, sexualities, and lives. And we'll get into how we sort of do that. I know that that's like a lot. It's a very like lofty mission there, but the way we sort of move makes it very, very like easy for us to sort of achieve these things. We envision a world where economic, social, and cultural equity, restorative justice, body autonomy, and comprehensive reproductive and sexual freedom exists, where all people are empowered, valued, and able to make liberatory decisions about their communities, families, and lives. And we do this, fully knowledgeable that we're operating in the South that has like a lasting legacy of exploitation, slavery, oppression, Jim Crow. And we do that and we pay homage to those organizers before us who had to navigate these things. So that's why, we do base our work in the South, and we are very intentional about uplifting that this is work that we are doing in the South, because we recognize that this is a movement that we're not the first to be doing this work, essentially. There are many people before us who have been doing this work. So yeah, let me see. I think there are more questions here. Oh, we have someone from, the Colorado Organization for Latino Opportunity and Reproductive Rights in Denver. Oh my goodness, we're going across the nation. I'm with it. So this is to answer someone's question. This is like the question box, but I'm able to see like your answers. So please keep putting them in here. Missouri. Oh, someone originally from Missouri. And they're now in DC. Cool. And of course we have a fellow Atlantean. Cool, 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 cool. All right. So, and this is a great opportunity to sort of just introduce Spark's current staff. We actually just recently, like within like the last month or two, we just got to like our full staff. So we're very, very excited about that. So we have Dr. Crystal Redman, our executive director. She actually came on about 5 years ago, I believe. And she's been sort of leading our work and, framing Spark sort of as like, experts in public health, because she is a doctor of public health. So that is Dr. Crystal Redman. and the rest of the staff, besides Dr. Redmond, were relatively new. Um, I think Randy and I actually, we've been here, besides Dr. Redmond, we've been here the longest, being that we've been here like 2 years, almost at this point. Um, so yeah, we just got to this full staff. So we have Randy Gregory, our director of program. She holds a lot of like our programmatic and policy work. Erin Gloucester, our digital communications and development coordinator. She may have been the person, like you may have seen her name come up like for like getting this like as like a presenter for this webinar. No, it's me. But since she holds like our like communications work, you may see her name like on a lot of stuff. And she holds like a lot of like our social media stuff, our promotional stuff. If you've heard of Spark, it's probably because she had something to do with it. So she holds a lot of that work. I'm the lead organizer. And I actually wanted to actually use this opportunity to sort of tell y'all how I got in the work personally. So like I said, I've been an organizer here at Spark for almost 2 years, 2 years come end of July. And before Spark, I really did not have any knowledge of like what reproductive justice was. Though my framework was reproductive justice. Like that was the framework that I had, but I just didn't know that there was a name for it. So throughout college, I had organized around like feminist issues, so like abortion, raise or equal pay, stuff like that. And I took this course the spring semester of my senior year called Women's Work Choices. And essentially, like the conclusion of that course was that as a woman, it would be very difficult, if not impossible, for me to achieve what my career goals were at that time and have and like raise a family. Definitely ignoring the fact that there are definitely people who have done this before, like, but it just seemed like sort of like this insurmountable task for me. So I got to this point where I was just like, this can't be a thing. Like, why why is it that like I can't, in a sense, I guess, have it all. So I grappled with that for a while. I worked with this other, like, very, very small nonprofit here in Atlanta called Atlanta Women for Equality, who they do work for women and girls who experience sex discrimination on the job or at school. And that was like completely like volunteer work. Until I got to the point where I'm just like, I would love to be paid for for the stuff, I like to do, and for, and for organizing and things like that. So I found Spark, applied, interviewed, and was ultimately hired as an organizer, and fully became acquainted with the RJ framework and realized here is the solution. Here is what I need to be doing. This is how I need to move in order to achieve like whatever like personal and professional goals I may have for myself, and to ensure liberation for all people, essentially. So I'm very fortunate that I was able to have that exposure. Um, Ebony is now our new community organizer. They just came on maybe about maybe a month. I'm not sure. But they just came on, or Ebony just came on. We're really pleased to have them here. Kelly Good, our trans leadership coordinator, she holds a lot of like our trans leadership initiative work, and I'll explain what that work is later. And then Carter, our office administrator. One big happy family over here. So yeah, that's our staff. I really wanted to uplift that, our staff is, even though we're relatively new, we're young. We definitely like reflect our base and who we're fighting with and for reproductive justice and queer liberation. So I'm really, really happy that we can have a staff that, is made up of folks within community. And I'm trying to be mindful of people who may have questions. Oh, we have someone working in Nashville. Oh, I went to school in Nashville. Okay, and someone in Marietta. All right, perfect. So this is how Spark defines RJ as a social justice movement rooted in the belief that individuals and communities should have the resources and power to make sustainable and liberatory decisions about their bodies, genders, sexualities, and lives. That's it. That's how we sort of define RJ. But definitely uplifting that that's not the definition that all organizations use. The most known definition of reproductive justice is how Sister Song defines reproductive justice. Sister Song is like the founding org, essentially, of reproductive justice, and they define it as the human right to bodily autonomy, to have children, not have children, and parent the children we have in safe, sustainable communities. So it's pretty much the same thing, right? Spark definitely uplifts that, accessibility is the key. We uplift that, it's folks having the resources and the power to make these decisions. Because if your decision is, yes, maybe terminate a pregnancy, but the other choice is like death, is not really a choice, right? So we want to make sure that folks have the resources and the power to make those decisions. And it's not just about like their bodies, but it's about their genders as well. It's about their sexualities, it's about their lives and their communities. So RJ can be that multifaceted. And then just a little bit more about our RJ lens, and sort of what sets us apart in a way. So we expand the narrative and framework within the RJ movement to go beyond the womb, and birthing rights and justice. So just within like just reproductive rights, health, and justice, sometimes we may fall into the trap of being very womb centered and like birth and abortion and stuff like that. But we're expanding that narrative and that framework, because we believe that it encompasses bodily autonomy, self-determination, our chosen families. It's pro-sex and sexuality, gender and queer bodies, and liberation. So it's not just about the womb. It's not just about having a child or not having a child or abortion and stuff like that. It's about how we're able to live in the world and whether we're supported and whether we have the resources to support ourselves. It includes all genders and persons, trans people, gender nonconforming folks, intersex folks, queer folks, and then of course cis women and men. It's Black and brown people of color, especially as we organize here in the South. We're definitely very intentional about uplifting those voices. It's immigrants. It includes immigrants and undocumented residents. It includes Indigenous folks, and it includes all ages and generations. So Spark, we work specifically with queer and trans young folks, because we recognize that young folks aren't often centered in these conversations, and we want to be very intentional about bringing those folks to the conversation and making sure their voices are heard, because young people have a lot to say. And like I said, we do all of this work with the legacy of exploitation and oppression in the South. And please feel free, like if any question comes up for you, please, put it in the chat box or the question box. I'll try to catch them as they come. So a little bit on like how we move. And when I say how we move, this is essentially like what we do. So how we move, we like achieve sort of like reproductive justice through these, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 tenants. So through leadership development and empowerment, and we do that through like our volunteer, intern, and fellowship opportunities. Actually, Ebony used to be a fellow with us, and now Ebony's on staff. So there is very much opportunity for growth here and just leadership development. And many opportunities just like volunteer, intern. I'll get into that a bit later, but there are a lot of opportunities to get involved through issue-based advocacy. So some of the issues that we've uplifted in the past that's more narrow than like the broad, like of course like queer issues, trans issues, issues that affect people of color, but some of the issues we've taken on are regarding like crisis pregnancy centers. Currently, the state of Georgia gives $2 million to crisis pregnancy centers. And for those who may not be familiar with what those are, these are like those, well, they're also known as like fake clinics, right? So maybe you've seen like a billboard somewhere or like these signs that are just like pregnant, scared, call this number or go to this place. And these are essentially clinics or spaces put in place to convince pregnant folks not to get an abortion. So what that looks like is lying to folks, literally locking people in a room until they affirm that they will not have an abortion. It means telling them they're further along than they actually are, giving them false information, giving them false promises, shaming them for the choices they may have made. And currently, the state of Georgia gives $2 million a year to these crisis pregnancy centers. So, Spark, we really want to uplift, or what we really want to do is have the state of Georgia defund those crisis pregnancy centers and maybe move that money to things that will actually benefit our communities, like comprehensive sex ed, which we don't have, or just back to the Department of Public Health to focus on issues that are actually harming our communities. What else? Anti-shackling legislation. In the past, Spark has pushed legislation to ban the shackling of pregnant incarcerated people, because previous to this bill that actually just got passed this last legislative session, incarcerated pregnant folks would be shackled as they were trying to give birth, as they were being moved from place to place, and folks have experienced miscarriages because of that, or just imagine just trying to give birth while also being shackled to your bed. So the bill that was actually recently passed was an anti-shackling bill where they did ban that. But currently we're trying to push for the next legislative session a bill that would be a bit more holistic than that, and making sure that pregnant incarcerated folks aren't just not being shackled, but they're also receiving like the comprehensive health care they deserve, that maybe they have access to doulas, information about their pregnancies, ultrasounds, stuff like that. So we're really hoping that can gain some traction for next legislative session. Abortion is another issue that we've uplifted, particularly during this last legislative session, and maybe that's how some of y'all heard about Spark, because of a lot of the work we did around this abortion ban that came to Georgia, HB 481, where they would ban abortions after 6 weeks. So we did a lot of work around that bill, essentially going to the Capitol almost every day, talking to our legislators, trying to convince them not to pass this bill. Unfortunately, it did end up passing and the governor did sign it, but that does not mean we're done advocating against this bill. We will keep fighting until we can come to some sort of resolution, essentially until we bring RJ into the state and make sure that our legislators are making decisions based on a reproductive justice framework, and that includes access to abortion for all. So yeah, mini update on that. Expanding Medicaid. Georgia has yet to expand um, Medicaid for a lot of its citizens, and that leaves a lot of people just without basic health care or the ability to afford health care. So we definitely advocate to expand Medicaid so people can have access to um, their health care. And then some issues that we've currently been uplifting involve like gentrification. Atlanta is a city that is that is very quickly being gentrified. And we recognize this as an issue because people are being pushed out of their homes. Poor people are being, essentially made homeless because they can't afford to live where they are because other outside communities, mainly rich, mainly white, are coming into Atlanta and pushing poor Black people out of their homes. And that's definitely a reproductive justice issue. We've been working with other organizations to uplift that as a reproductive justice issue and come to some solutions and work and come to some solutions so that the city of Atlanta can be more mindful about the people they are pushing out in the interest of quote unquote progress. Um, so yeah, that was some of like, the issues that we've been advocating for, that we've advocated for in the past, that we'll continue to advocate for. Other ways in which we move, civic engagement and mobilizing. We do a lot of like get out the vote work, particularly during like last year during the election. And then we do voter registration, grassroots organizing. We bring folks to the Capitol. We organize our communities. That's women of color, Black women, queer and trans young people of color, to speak to their legislators, to advocate for themselves and their communities, because we recognize that change doesn't happen with people in authority just deciding to, just deciding, oh, this community doesn't have these resources. It comes from people, telling them what they need. It comes from people, advocating for themselves. So we're definitely big on grassroots organizing, canvassing, stuff like that. Health education and awareness. We're currently in the process of developing our own comprehensive sex ed curriculum, because not only because we see that as a need for just Georgia within our schools, but we just see that as a need just like for us and people in community, just to know how to navigate like just sex and stuff like that. We have this, our bowl o' condoms, as I like to call it. It's just like this big bowl of internal and external condoms that we bring to like all of like our tabling activities, or if we're going to speak, like at a school or whatever, just because, being able to provide, just contraceptives to folks is definitely just a radical liberatory act. So we definitely provide that sort of stuff. Outreach, we go to like partner events and community. We work in coalition with just like a lot of other like reproductive rights, health, and justice organizations throughout Atlanta. And trust me, Atlanta has a lot of them, and we're so glad that we can be in community with each of them and like go to their events, and they support us as we support them. Through direct actions, like I was mentioning before with like HB 481, it wasn't just like going to the Capitol and talking to our legislators. Sometimes we had to make some noise, right? And Spark definitely moves in a noise making capacity. It's funny, like just for this webinar, I sort of had to put a sign on my door that's just like, please quiet, webinar in progress, because otherwise it can get pretty loud in here, but it's all in good fun. And then trainings and workshops. So we have sort of, what's the word? Like a library of trainings and workshops that we do and offer. We have like an RJ 101, which basically, you know, explains what reproductive justice is, its history. An RJ 102, which gets a bit more into like the minutia and how it relates to maybe other like social movements and things like that. We have a queering RJ training and workshop. Well, right now it's just a training. We're expanding it into a full workshop, where we explain how like queer liberation and reproductive justice are inextricably linked. We're not just going to pay lip service to queer liberation or like queer and trans folks. We have to move in a way that's liberatory for queer and trans folks within reproductive justice. We have a training that sort of goes into that and how we do that. And that's going to be expanded to a workshop that's going to be a bit more interactive, have a bit more activities, making sure that people are able to grasp like some of the terms that come with it, some of the issues that accompany it, stuff like that. We have an organizing 101 because we recognize that a lot of people really want to get into the work and they don't really know how. So we offer a training to sort of tell them how they can like organize within their own communities. And it's a really great training. Randy typically gives that training and people get a lot of information from that. We have an RJ timeline to sort of give like the history of like just different reproductive justice moments and times, but also we've integrated more like queer history, right? And it's a very interactive timeline in that we encourage folks to put in like their own histories. If there are any gaps, they're encouraged to put those in as well. So it's an always growing timeline. It stays very liquid. Right now, I think we print them out like on separate like sheets of paper. So I think right now it's up to, oh my goodness, 60 pages at this point, and it's always growing. And then we like give these like trainings and workshops primarily like just like within like community with community partners and local colleges. Atlanta is a very like college city. We have Georgia State, Georgia Tech, Emory, Agnes Scott, the AUC with Clark Atlanta, Spelman, and Morehouse. So we have a lot of colleges that we've had the opportunity to just like go on their campuses and talk about RJ essentially and give like various trainings. And then last year on a more like national scale, we were able to go to Planned Parenthood's Power of Pink conference and give like a full like, oh my goodness, it was like a full 5-hour reproductive justice workshop. It was literally one of the coolest things I've ever gotten to do, one of the coolest things I've ever got to facilitate. Yeah, we're out here doing this work. What else? All right, and then a little bit more about like just specific programs that we have. And this sort of goes into like how we move as well, right? So we have our Speak Justice, Take Action program. And under that, within that, contained within that is our Spark Organizing Intensive and our Legislate This Advocacy Day. So this is essentially our leadership development / advocacy programming, where with our Spark Organizing Intensive, we teach folks within community how to organize essentially and like how to speak to the legislators, what specific policies Georgia already has in place as it relates to RJ, and how we can sort of talk to our legislators to either shift those policies or make those policies better. So that's our Spark Organizing Intensive. We have it at the beginning of the year during Georgia's legislative session. Georgia's legislative session runs from like end of January, I believe, to like end of March, beginning of April. It's 40 non-consecutive days that the legislator meets at the beginning of the year. So we have our organizing intensive like in January at some day, and it's like a half-day training where we teach people how to essentially talk to the legislators and organize. And then that leads into about a month later, we hold our Legislate This Advocacy Day, where we provide that space where we bring people to the Capitol to talk to our legislators while they're in session. And it's always just like a lot of fun, if not very hectic, because Georgia is, from what I've heard, is pretty unique in how we're able to sort of like lobby our legislators. We essentially go to like whatever chamber they're in, whether it's the House side or the Senate side, and we line up outside behind like these literally like velvet, like red velvet ropes. We call it lobbying on the ropes. And we essentially summon our legislators to come out of the chamber so we can talk to them for like a quick 2 to 5 minute conversation about specific like legislation, issue, things that are affecting us. And it's really cool, if not really unique. um, and yeah, we during Legislate This, we definitely like provide that space for folks. Sometimes we'll have like a guest speaker from community, and it's just a really great opportunity for folks in our base. Um, and then other programming we have our Fierce Youth Reclaiming Empowerment Camp, or our Fire Camp, which is actually happening in a couple of weeks. This is our leadership development cultural arts camp, essentially, where we invite young queer and trans people of color from all over the Southeast to come and essentially learn about RJ. It's all expense paid. We pay for your travel, we pay for your food, we pay for your lodging. We just really want to make sure that it's an accessible space for everyone. And they're able to come and learn about RJ, learn about organizing, but also because we try to shift culture within just not, I mean, within definitely like Spark, but within reproductive justice as a whole, we add on like an arts element to it. So years past, we've had fire camp with dancing, we've had it with photography, we've had it with theater. That's actually what we did last year, and the campers put on like this amazing performance at the end. And then this year, we're actually gonna have them create a zine. And it should be really, really cool. We've done like a preliminary, like just call for submission. So if you're interested in like being included in our zine, that's still open. Just check us out on our social medias to find out more information about that. Um, but yeah, it's just a really, really great opportunity for folks to come together for free, be in community with each other, learn about reproductive justice, um, learn about organizing. And then once, you know, they're finished with fire camp, they're part of like our health advocacy cohort. And I didn't include that in the slide, though I should have. Our health advocacy cohort, which is basically a cohort of people who have attended fire. Once they go back to their homes, their communities, they are able to just organize around issues that they care about with Spark support behind them, whether it's like you know, financial support, whether we're able to like provide like some training for them, stuff like that. They're part of that cohort for a year where they're able to just organize with their communities with Spark's backing. So we think that's a really, really cool just opportunity for folks. And then we have our Trans Leadership Initiative. I mentioned that before with Kelly taking on that work as our Trans Leadership Coordinator. This is an initiative. It's a fairly new initiative where we provide space for trans folks in our communities to come together and talk about and uplift their issues and have those conversations and then organize around those issues. So it's a really, really great program that we have, and Kelly does a great job of holding that space. So yeah, I think those were all the things. If you have, like I said, any questions, so I feel like I'm doing a great job because I'm not receiving any questions. So yeah, what else? So recognizing that maybe some of you were able or heard about Spark because of some of like the work we did around the abortion ban this past winter and spring. I definitely wanted to uplift that reproductive justice is not just abortion. It's not just about abortion. Definitely recognizing that like abortion is okay. It's, you know, something that is necessary and something that we're definitely like positive about. But reproductive justice is so much more than that. It includes abortion, but you know, within RJ, as I've stated before, um, is the belief that individuals and communities should have the resources and power to make sustainable and liberatory decisions about their bodies, genders, sexualities, and lives. It's pro-sex, it's sexuality, gender, queer bodies, and contraception, birthrights and shares of families. It's struggling towards liberation within and with community, to working towards a world free of reproductive violence and oppression, systems of oppressions, institutional control, eugenics, medicalization, and violence that works to uphold and reinforce dangerous and negative policies, practices, and culture. And there is so much that that goes into that, right? So abortion is a reproductive justice issue, but also oh my goodness, totally lost my train of thought. But also immigration is a reproductive justice issue. Like how are we treating undocumented residents as they come into this country, right? What else? Environmental justice is a reproductive justice issue. When you don't have clean water within your community, how are you supposed to raise a child or have a child, essentially? Um, it's where do we decide to place biohazards, right? What communities are we placing those biohazards in? It's gentrification, like I've uploaded before. How are we supposed to raise our families if we're being kicked out of our homes that we've been in for generations because of increased housing prices and stuff like that. And you know, Spark definitely uplifts all of those issues, and we try to center the issues that you know our base feels most strongly about. Um, so with like queer and trans folks, you know, how do we center those voices and those experiences, particularly with like chosen families? How do we navigate a system that may tell you that like the family that essentially ostracized you is the family you have to um, essentially have to stick with in order to have like a safe, sustainable life, and does not recognize maybe a family you created for yourself, not just an issue of marriage, but just like a family you created for yourself for within like just like your community, right? So it's reproductive justice is so multifaceted, and we work to uplift the multifacetedness of it. So after this, you may be like, oh, Spark sounds amazing. How can I stay involved? What can I do? So there are various ways you know you can stay involved with us. Volunteer with us. You know, we're always looking for people to help us canvas, do some admin support within the office, do direct action support. You know, we're always looking for folks who are willing to be like interns or fellows. Our next fellowship period actually starts pretty shortly. The next fellowship period starts in September. Applications for that should be going out pretty soon. Always looking for interns, particularly if you're like you're in school, you're looking just like for an internship opportunity. We have like currently we have fall and spring internship opportunities. Working on getting a summer internship together, but that may take a bit more time. And then, and this is what I'm actually really excited about, a bit somewhere down the line, we're still working out like when exactly you want to have that. We're going to be having base member meetings. We really wanted to hold a space where folks can take a bit of ownership of some of the work that like Spark does, whether it looks like, you know, coming to us and being like these are issues that we definitely want Spark to uplift, or it looks like having Spark support as you organize around these issues. So we definitely wanted to have like, these base member meetings and spaces to like just come and not only be in community with each other, but do the work, right? And then as always, donate. I'll never say no to a donation. But that's our donate link right there, bit.ly / donate Spark in all caps. Always welcome donations. Questions. I'm gonna give a few minutes for questions if anyone has, if there's anything I missed or if there's anything that wasn't clear to you, just let me know. Actually finishing a bit early, which is good. Get y'all out of here early. But yeah, if you have any questions, just put it in the chat box. And let me see, I think seeing what people may have said about like what they're passionate about. Okay, we had someone who said they're passionate about self-determination, compassion, opposed to, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know what this is. It looks like 7 inbred look at capitalism, hybrid look. Well, I'll go with the first part. Passionate about self-determination and compassion. So you came to the right place. RJ moves through through compassion, right? It's how we take care of one another, how these systems or the people in power take care of us. And self-determination. I think I've said self-determination about 5 times just throughout this webinar. It's how we're able to make these decisions about like our bodies, our sexualities, our genders, and our lives in a safe and affirming environment. So I'm glad that you're passionate about that, and I'm hoping through Spark we can definitely push some of the issues that you feel most passionate about. Oh, we have someone from NARAL. We work with NARAL here in Atlanta, or the Georgia NARAL chapter, and they're great. All right. So if there are no questions, being of sound, minds, hearts, and bodies. Here is our contact info. If anything else like comes up for you, please feel free to reach out through our info at Spark email. We're on all the social medias, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and SoundCloud. We have a Spark Off podcast, where once a month, Spark staff and maybe like some members of community, we come together and just discuss an issue that has been coming up for us. We have very informal conversations just within the office, and sometimes we're like, this should be a podcast, so we put it on there. I think we're most active just like on our Instagram. That's where you'll find like all of our pictures. We uplift like all of our events and maybe even like community partner events on there. Then our Facebook as well. So there are a lot of ways you can stay involved with us. And then if you're interested in like just like volunteering with us, this actually was included in here. We have an email, volunteer@sparkrj.org. So it's literally just volunteer at sparkrj.org. So if you're interested in volunteering, definitely reach out to that email. So yeah, that's all of our contacts. Thank you so much for, joining us for this webinar. I hope you learned a lot. Please feel free to reach out and tell folks about Spark, because, we're always looking for folks who are interested in reproductive justice, particularly for like Black and brown folks, queer and trans, young people of color. And if you know anyone like that, definitely tell them to come here. I hope you all have an amazing rest of your day. Again, thank you for joining, and I guess I'll see you out there. Bye.